What's up, guys? Welcome to Whiskey. I'm Jeff. This is a channel where I offer my thoughts and opinions on a specific whiskey, and if you stick around to the end, I'll be giving it a score as well. If that sounds interesting, hit subscribe down below, and with that out of the way, let's jump into our review. Today we're looking at the Talisker 10 again. Stick around. Okay, so it's another re-review today, and I think this is actually the first time on the channel that I've looked at a bottle for the third time, so it's a re-review. The last time I looked at this one, I did a side-by-side. I did this bottle against the older version. The older version, of course, looks like this. So obviously when Talisker rebranded, they made a pretty big visual departure, but I also noted in that review that it was a pretty big departure in terms of flavor as well. Although in that video, I noted that it wasn't necessarily for the worst. Now, I'm not doing another side-by-side today, and that's just because I don't have a bottle of the old 10. So I'll just be looking at this one. I'll tell you where I stand on it now, how I feel about it now. And yeah, I'll dig around the memory archives a little bit and see if I can compare this to the old 10. Obviously, memory is a tricky thing. I have a terrible memory. It shocks me I can even remember my own name sometimes. But I did have a bottle of the old 10 not that long ago, so we'll see. Anyway, not much to say about Talisker 10 that hasn't already been said. We don't know what the cask breakdown is. They don't release much in terms of production information here. Talisker, as many of you know, does have one of the better ABVs from a Diageo release. Best ABV this side of, let's say, Kleinlich and Lagavulin 8. Now for me, this is one of those back in the day bottles. This was an essential pour during my formative years. Formative years, of course, meaning not my childhood, not when I was a 4-year-old kid who was barely potty trained. By formative years, I mean back when I was just first getting into whiskey. So this was back when I was like 20-something and barely potty trained. Anyway, Talisker 10, like I said, this is the third time reviewing it here on the channel. So hopefully I don't feel the need to revisit this one for a good while. I talk about this one a lot. So yeah, let's not waste any more time. Let's jump into our review. In the meantime, if you'll kindly leave a like down below, that would be greatly appreciated. All right, for specs, this one comes in at 45.8%. Now, this I always give a pass to. Like, I complain a lot on this channel about a lot of very small things, but an ABV that's 0.2% shy of 46% is not a hill I'm going to die on. I don't care. Beyond that, for chill filtration, probably. For color, definitely. All right, so for looks, I didn't get quite as mad as a lot of people a couple years back when Talisker rebranded. That said, I don't like it as much as I initially did, and admittedly, especially with the orange highlights here, it does look kind of like cartoonish and tacky. So this look has kind of fallen out of favor with me. I'm gonna give it 2.5 out of 5. Obviously, they do not say non-chill filtered and natural color here. In fact, this bottle does not give us much of anything when it comes to information. It says that it's from the Isle of Skye, it's made by the sea. Our tasting notes are ruggedly maritime, peat, sweet smoke, and pepper. Latitude and longitude, if you're trying to find the distillery. That's it. All right, so on the nose, this does smell like a Talisker. The typical Talisker notes are here. So we get some gentle peat. There's some mineral type notes in here. We get some pepper. There's some honey, there's some toffee in here. There's also some orangey type notes in here, like orange, tangerine, orange liqueur even. There's some gentle vanilla notes in here. That's about it. It is a simple nose, but it's pleasant enough. All right, so on the palate and finish, this does have a decent texture. It's quite mouth coating, and I do love the classic Talisker elements. I love that Talisker gentle peat, those gentle coastal notes. It's salty, it's smoky, there's toffee, there's caramels, there's white pepper, there's minerals, there's orange liqueur in here, medium finish. All right, so I wanted to look at this stuff again just because I do want to update my opinion on it formally and just put it out in a video. The last time I looked at this one, I did a side-by-side with the old 10, as I said, and the key takeaway from that video, this was 2 years ago, the key takeaway from that video is that with the new Talisker, it was a step to the side, but not necessarily a step down. Now, I maintain that that first bottle that I had a couple years back in that video was a good bottle. It had this kind of like savory, meaty, bacony element that I really enjoyed there, and I think, what I think happened there was that because this was fresh off the rebrand, this is one of the first new Talisker 10s that came out with a new label. I think there was some kind of like transition in flavor happening. because this one here, which is a very recent Talisker 10, does not boast any of those bacony, meaty flavors that I really enjoyed with the last bottle. In fact, broadly speaking, it just doesn't enjoy the same depth as that bottle. So is this as good? No, it isn't. It's not a bad whiskey, but it's nowhere near the quality of the last bottle that I had, even though that bottle was under this label. And I think the biggest issue that I have with this one is that it's lost a lot of its depth. To me, this is a very superficial whiskey. All the flavors that we get are recognizable as Talisker, but they are very surface level. And if you want to dig beneath that, you find almost no subtlety, nuance, or complexity there. And I'm not saying that like previous Talisker 10s were these master classes in subtlety and nuance. Talisker 10, as far back as I can remember, has always been a pretty straightforward, straight shooter of a whiskey, but it did boast more depth and complexity than we're getting today. That's for sure. And listen, this still tastes very Talisker. Like, Talisker is such a distinctive spirit. Nothing else really tastes like Talisker, and this does taste like a Talisker. It couldn't be from any other distillery. Just as I said, it's a very superficial representation of what Talisker can and often does do. And I don't see this whiskey as this benchmark that it once was. It was always a benchmark of quality. It was like this foundation upon which other Taliskers sort of like built and expanded upon. And anytime someone would ask me about Talisker, or anytime someone wanted something that was gently peaty and coastal, I would always send them to Talisker 10. And I'm not going to do that anymore. And I think broadly speaking, a lot of the entry-level Talisker range has lost its magic. You might just say that's me getting snobbier, which granted is possible. But nowadays, when people ask me to recommend a Talisker, I usually send them to the mid-range stuff. Obviously, the old, fancy, expensive Taliskers are excellent, 18 and older, but those are really expensive now. So mid-range for me is where Talisker shines. They have a bottle called the Surge out right now, which I think is excellent. That one is a travel retail exclusive, but if you can get your hands on it, definitely try that one. Palate is a limited release. I've talked about that one a lot recently on the channel. That one also is very, very good. Now, if you are on a particularly tight budget, or you don't mind something a little bit more basic, you just want that Talisker flavor, this will do the trick. It's not a bad whiskey, as I said, but it's definitely not my go-to, and it used to be. Because despite having some familiar flavors, I'm just not engaging with the experience. And if you know me and if you know the channel, you know that Talisker is one of my all-time favorite brands. This one's a disappointment. And listen, I know I sound super negative in this video, and I don't usually try and come off this negative, but I don't think my last video represents my current stance on Talisker 10, nor does it represent the current state of Talisker 10. So I felt it was kind of like important to update my opinion. Well, important. I'm a whiskey reviewer. But no, it's not a great whiskey anymore. It once was. Score is going to be 82. So is this a recommend for me? Not really. It's not bad, and if you're okay with something simple and, like I said, you don't want to overspend, this will do. It'll do. Now, before we touch on value, I do want to say a quick thank you to all my patrons and channel members. Guys, thank you so much for the support, and if you want to help out, if you want to help keep this channel independent and financially sustainable, there are a number of ways that you can help. I have both Patreon and PayPal listed down below. Anything and everything helps, guys, and again, huge thank you to those of you who are already supporting the channel. Now let's see if this is worth it. Okay, so for value, I honestly can't knock this bottle. I know I sounded really negative in this review, but it is not an expensive whiskey, so I think the price is actually quite fair. This is one of the cheapest peated single malts that's sold in my market, in fact. This one sells for about, it's like just over $30 American, roughly 25 pounds in my market, and that is really, really cheap. So even though the experience itself is not particularly impressive, the price tag is excellent. So again, value, I can't say anything. It's good. Okay, that's it for the video today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and obviously I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the current state of Talisker 10? Do you think it's gone downhill? Do you think it's any different than it used to be? Let me know all of that down below. And finally, if there's something you want to see me review, or if you've got suggestions for the channel, you can also put those down below. And I guess we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.